Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of AgogeTV. I'm your host Phil, and joining me shortly is my co-host Josh Summersgill, and our guest today is the legend Paul Warrior. Paul Warrior was previously responsible for Warrior Programming. He has ties with Bulldog Gear. He's currently working on a project called Around the Campfire. Awesome conversation, super funny guy. And I'm sure everybody will enjoy today's podcast. Before we move on to the podcast, obviously, as always, please check out our sponsor. Our sponsor for today's show is X-Endurance, xendurance.eu, to get on their website and to get 20% off your order. Use code AgogeTV20. Enjoy the show, guys. Right, guys, here we go. Welcome back to another episode of AgogeTV. Excited to have Paul join us on today's show. Paul, thank you very much for coming on, buddy. And first things first, obviously, I always like to find out how people started CrossFit and how they got into training people and working with people. So if you can summarise that, give it a whirl, mate.
Yeah, I couldn't find a Jim Jones gym.
Right. Nice. I like it.
that was it. I was trying to find a Jim Jones gym. I'd seen some videos from Mark Twight, and I was like, yes, that looks badass. And I've said it to a few of the people, as I kind of was originally a skateboarder when I was younger, and I kept that kind of punk rock mentality with me. And then stumbled across some Mark Twight's writings and some of his videos, and then the 300 came out, and in line with your name. Yeah. And Spartan training. I wanted to be that badass. I wanted to look like Jared Butler, or any of them, in fact, just any of them. Any of them would have been fine. And I kind of saw it, and he said something about functional training. He said about people training like as if their lives depended on it, like putting their fitness to the test, putting their fitness on the line. He was a cool mountain climber guy, and I just kind of really liked that idea of training. Bumped into a friend at a wedding. I was talking to him about it. He's like, "Oh, you should try this thing called CrossFit," and I was like, "Well, that sounds like a terrible name. Why would I want to do that?" And,
it is a terrible name, to be fair.
Well, it seemed to have worked, but I just and then it kind of had some of the elements that I was looking for. So it had kettlebells in CrossFit when we started back in like 2010, when I started doing it, was we did a lot more stuff with kegs, sled pushes, kind of like a lot more stuff that's maybe not in there. It was kind of pre-open. It was kind of the first year of the open was coming in, so we hadn't become adhered to this kind of the 24 or like the 20, however many the movements are across the range of the open now, probably only around 30. The 30 movements that we typically put into classes, actually we kind of like were way off that. We had some beer kegs, some of them were half full, some of them were empty, walking around, spending full classes, putting those above our heads and just trying not to, knock ourselves out when they came crashing down, and, learning to do muscle-ups for the first time, trying to figure things out. So, I actually came from a completely different thing. It just happened to be CrossFit. And as a result, kind of my experience of CrossFit grew with us becoming like a competitive group. And it just kind of took charge from there. Awesome. I was the worst one out of the bunch of us, so I naturally became the coach and programmer.
Funny how that happens.
While I helped and supported the other ones be like totally badass.
Me too. No, so that's awesome. And again, like I always love people's CrossFit stories because everyone's always it's similar but unique in the same time. It's always really relatable. But since starting CrossFit, you've actually gone on to start multiple companies, I believe.
Yeah. So I've been involved in a few things.
Yeah.
Some of them have evolved, some of them have changed.
Cool. So where did that start? What was the first company that you sort of went, right, okay, I'm gonna jump into this?
I think Built Up North and Warrior Programming happened more or less simultaneously with different people. Okay. Warrior Programming started out of a dialogue, a conversation with another friend about he had an opinion on how he would get better at CrossFit, which was I'm going to basically stop doing the CrossFit bit and just start doing strength training. Right. Which was quite a common theme, and it still is a common theme with people like pulling away and being like, well, if I work on my strength, if I can push press 100, then surely handstand push-ups will be easier.
Yeah.
When you're doing 45, it's actually.
I don't think it helps though when you look at.
When you're doing 45, it's a completely different energy system. So, and a completely different like stimulus. So I was like, I didn't know a lot about training, to be honest. I was just kind of like looking at it. I was like, that doesn't seem to make sense to me. So I went down another avenue, put a little post in Facebook. That was the thing then. Put a post in the Facebook group and was said, hey, can I have two guinea pigs? And took a couple of guys on.
Nice.
They turned into badasses. One of them, she went from never being an athlete at all to being on the regionals team.
Awesome.
So yeah, and I was kind of like, oh, this works really well. This kind of idea that I've got around that. And as that happened, the group of people grew from, we called them goat killers at the time. A group of people grew from 2 to 4 to 6 to 12, to a whole bunch of us, to quarter of the gym doing that additional work.
Right.
And yeah, that just grew. That business just grew on its own.
Awesome.
I worked with a guy, Laurent Camps, absolute legend of a guy. He was on the regionals team, and then he moved away, and he asked me to program for him remotely, which I thought was a terrible idea at the time.
Yeah.
I was like, but I liked him. I liked talking to him. He was a really good friend. And so I continued that relationship with him, and it didn't work very well. As in the programming, like he got caught up into the box that he was in, and he got involved in them, and he wanted to do that thing instead, which he totally could understand. But from the pitfalls and that, I realized actually there was a really good way to work remotely. And I think my first remote client was in France.
Right.
And I still program for him now.
Awesome.
Right. He qualified for as a national champ for Tunisia this year for the games before all of this happened. Yeah. He's had a broken neck during the time I've coached him. He had an accident on some rings. The muscle-up ring snapped in his hands whilst he was doing a muscle-up and landed on his neck. Sent me a little text message, hey coach, I've broken my neck. I was like, what? And then he's fully braced up in a bed.
The text every coach wants to receive.
Yeah. Oh yeah, he's like,
was it on my rings in my gym? Right, okay.
Oh no. It was not. He was in France. It was nothing to do with me. But yeah, so just we start to work with people remotely, and actually you realize you can have a really positive effect. And sometimes you can see that because you're stepped so far back. If they communicate well with you and they talk to you and they tell you things and you see enough videos of them, you can actually spot things that people there can't see. Yeah. Because you're looking at it or you're looking for it, because you're watching while the coach is dealing with 20 people, you're watching one and you're zoomed in, you zoomed out. Yeah. You're watching how it's working, what's going wrong, and you can spot flaws in people's mechanics, that other people may not notice just because they see them every day.
Yeah. I suppose you can rewatch videos, can't you? Like,
it's amazing.
They're live, you miss it. But like you say, if you watch it on a video, you can go back and go, hang on a minute, that's got something there. Yeah. So yeah, there's definitely positives to it, absolutely.
So warrior programming had a big ethos behind it. We're all about just trying to make everyone as badass as we can, and understanding that doesn't just mean their physical capability, but like transcending that into like their like mental capacity, their mental toughness. The way they approach their workouts. We're big on effort, and the way what people put into it is what they get out of it. And we try to just like debunk a lot of bullshit and try and just really go down the whole like, look, just put the work in, put the effort in, and you'll get good results. And we had an idea that we would write, the best program available for people, and like, whether everyone clicked and related to it, because belief is a huge thing of whether you buy into something. I actually believe that kind of the concept and the thought and the detail that went in between me and the coaching team, I think we wrote like one of the most badass things out there.
Love it.
And I really loved that process. So yeah, that went on. I was part of that for 7 years. I created it, and ran it for 7 years.
Amazing. So just before we move on to, obviously you're moving away from that, it sounds to me like you were a bit ahead of the curve all the time, if that makes sense. So you were always like you say, everybody is now going, well, we can't just do strength work and get better at CrossFit. Do you know what I mean? Like you can't just look at CrossFit. You've got to look at the mental aspect of it as well. Like you always seem to be a little bit ahead of that. Was like, was that just a natural thing that you were like, well, this doesn't make sense, so I'm going to do me? Or was that something that you learned from somebody or picked up?
No, I think it comes through dialogue, discussion, like where you're looking and where you're getting information from. You know, certainly the Jim Jones guys were a lot about effort. They were a lot about, you know, how people feel about things. Mark Twight was, you know, discussions with Emma Hackett, Limitless Coaching.
Yeah.
Like discussions with her, we sat there talking about, oh, look how these people are behaving. How does that affect their training?
Yeah.
Understanding people, relating to them, being human in general. And I think that, you know, people miss that massively a lot of the time.
Yeah.
So I do think perhaps we're ahead of the time, and perhaps, you know, perhaps our marketing strategy was maybe posting people puking on the floor wasn't always the greatest way to get that message across. But, you know, it was kind of like, hey, effort's free. It doesn't, you know, it's totally accessible. Anyone in the world can give 100%. It might look like multiple different things.
Yeah.
But everyone can give 100% of their version of training. And, you know, and I always wanted to show the process rather than the end product, because I feel, you know, and people buy into the end product. They see someone snatching big, or they see like someone with abs drinking a protein shake or something. They're like, oh, I want to look like that. That's what I want to look like that. And I was always like, yeah, but that looked like this to get there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, this wasn't a quick fix. It wasn't dodgy supplementation at all. Most of the good athletes I work with don't even drink protein shakes, you know, and it wasn't those things. It was effort and good habits.
Yeah.
And building relationships with those people and understanding the difference between, you know, someone when they're having a good day, someone when they're having a bad day, what's going on in their world, what car they drive, you know, which sounds like a stupid thing, but hey, some cars lead to injuries and back pain. How do they sit at home? Like, it becomes this intricacies of getting to know people and understanding them, having a massive impact. And you can try and look on that on a collective basis, which Warrior Programming did in terms of the blog programming and like, how can we collectively encourage people to be better? And that is through, hey, here's social media that shows you what effort looks like, so that when you're doing a workout, you can go back to that reference point and go, oh, he was on the floor. Okay. And I was walking around fine. Perhaps I didn't give what I was meant to give that day. And then kind of trying to, through words, through discussions, kind of trying to have, you know, some deep moments where maybe reflect on what it all means to even train and to become better. Because again, being better and being fitter aren't the same thing.
Yeah.
And being fitter can definitely learn to not being better.
Yeah. Yeah. I like it. I like it a lot.
It depends who you are with, you know, who you are without a six pack and who you are with a six pack could be two completely different things depending on how you cope with success or what you see success as.
Yeah, and I like it. And so what, again, like just to elaborate on that a little bit, because I like the concept, what is your ethos around that? Where would you guide it? Somebody comes to you and they're like, I don't know, let's throw an example out there. I want to be ripped and I want to snatch 200k, whatever. Do you know what I mean? Like throwing something mental out there, like, and wow. where would you get? Yeah. Okay. So where would you guide somebody from there? Do you get what I mean? Like, how would you attack somebody who's like giving you? Because I think it comes a lot where people like come to you and they're like, oh, well, I want to be better at CrossFit, but I also want to look like this person, and I want to do this, and I want to be able to do 30 unbroken muscle ups. And do you know what I mean? Like, obviously, there's a lot of mixed signals in CrossFit, isn't there? So
yeah, there is, and you've got to just kind of get to the point about what is their main goal. And I think if I had someone who came to me with that many goals, I'd probably break them down and say, oh, that's not really your goal. You're wanting the look of fitness without the fitness, and you want the accolade of being able to do the muscle ups. Actually, you just really want to do things better than everyone else because you're insecure. Yeah. Maybe we'll start there and figure out what you actually want from this and where we can go from that. Yeah. You know, and then just look at things. I mean, one of my clients once showed me a picture of someone and said, I want to look massive like this guy. I was like, well, cool. There's a goal. I like that. Like, we can talk through this. You know, he's always felt like he was the skinny kid and he was scrawny and he didn't want to be skinny and scrawny anymore. Yeah. You know, he said he'd always felt like he'd been that. So he came to me with a goal, and it was a physical transformation. And I'm not going to judge someone for making a physical transformation. We negotiated. I said, but I don't want to make you unhealthy or incapable. Yeah. So let's keep the capability in. Let's at least once a week do a functional session that's going to, that's going to be much more about moving things around objects, moving in multiple ways, maybe kind of like a movement flow based kind of thing to keep you functional because they don't want you to be hunched over. But equally, I had to take charge of his nutrition, and like we ended up getting him on like 4,500 calories. Wow. And and building his nutrition up slowly and changing his relationship with food and his understanding of food. And then we changed the way he trained and his viewpoint on training, but he understood that it was part of this process that we were going to go through. I was like, dude, you're going to get fat in some of this. Like, I was like, but genuinely, like, you want to get there, we're going to get a bit fat. But that's cool, because it's part of the goal. So we need to see that you getting fat as a benchmark, within this thing that we're going in the right direction. And if you can't cope with that, we ain't going to go where you need to go. Yeah. And we had a dialogue, we had a conversation about that, and we created a roadmap based around that. We looked a little bit into the guy who he was interested in, who happened to be this singer of this band, who's like totally gnarly and covered in tattoos and super burly. He's a powerlifter. He does powerlifting and a bit of bodybuilding on the side. So I'm like, well, okay, there's a template. Let's look at some good powerlifting things. Let's look at like a West Side variation. And let's do that a couple of days a week, and then let's change the dynamic variation so it's a bit more functional in bodybuilding, because then the dynamic efforts, higher rep ranges, we get to add size in there that complements the strength and also creates like robust joints so that again you can complement the strength work, and let's keep some functional work in there. And through this we've negotiated, he's almost developed his own training plan that he's fully bought into because he understands the process.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And so they're the conversations we need to have with clients, is taking them and kind of having the question of like, what does this mean for you? What does functional for you look like? And what does the output of getting to this destination that you see, are we going to be able to acknowledge that you're actually there when you are there? Because people can't always see the progress they've made. They always want the next thing. Are we going to be able to acknowledge the progress you've made? And who are you going to be at the end of this journey? What are you going to have established? And if at the end of the journey it's like, yeah, I'm going to be a big burly arsehole, then maybe that's not the goal for you, But if it's going to be like, hey, I feel like it's going to build me some more confidence, I feel kind of happy, I feel like I've accomplished this physical transformation that maybe, I doubted was possible at one point in my life, and now I can see that there's a journey there. I'm fully bought into this. Yeah. Cool, let's go for it. Get the ice cream, get the weights, it's on.
Regardless of goal then, just based on what you said then, would you always at least try and push people slightly down the functional route, regardless of what they want?
I am not, unless you're doing unless you're doing a sport that requires you to be dysfunctional for it, which most sport is a dysfunctional way of living. Yeah, sport is like, you're a powerlifter, you're a job, a photographer. You're not functional if you're a photographer. You're crouched over the entire time. Yeah. Like, that's fine. That's your function. Your function becomes that photographer.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would always try and engage people towards their jobs. What do they do? What are they outside, or what is part of their life? Like, if photography is playing rugby, it's like, if you play rugby, you maybe don't need to overhead squat ever.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll go to a CrossFit class and we'll say, hey everyone, we're doing overhead squats today. We scale it for everyone, but we don't.
No.
Yeah.
That dude needs to be closed up because he's about to go get hit 1,000 times. Maybe he doesn't need to have stupid range. Settle down with the PVC dislocates. Like, you're just going to end up getting told. So, we need to look at like, what sport are they playing? What does functional look like for that person? What's going to make them perform better? So these things come into mind. I had a big discussion recently about, whether, I don't want to say the word, but like adaptive athletes, for instance. Yeah. And the fact that we're already calling them adaptive athletes means that we've completely disregarded that they're not adaptive athletes. They're just them. And what functional looks like for them and what functional looks like for someone else, for me, might be different. So for me, a burpee is a representation of being able to get off the floor.
Yeah.
What does that look like for someone else who's perhaps, not got the same typical motor function that I have, has a different motor function?
Yeah.
What does that look like for them? What does getting up off the floor look like? And then then it's like, oh, well, I had to scale that workout. Did you? No, you didn't scale shit. You didn't. You did your version of what that functional movement did. So yeah, do I gauge people towards being functional? Yes, but then we have to define and communicate what function is. And function isn't 20 movements that if you can't do it, you're not functional. Yeah. Because why you can't do it might be the exact reason you are functional for what you're doing.
Yeah,
if that makes sense. So yeah, I always try and get people functional. I always believe in improving people's capability. If you're training with me and you can't do more after training with me, you can do less. and I have limited the way you exist and engage with the world, then I've made you worse at life.
Yeah.
And if coaching is making you worse at life, we really failed ourselves. Anyone, when they come to your gym, if we've injured them or we've limited their ability to play their own sport, or we're limited their ability to do their job, or, we've created an environment where they're more interested in the gym than the thing that they were good at, that they were excelling at in life, then we've created like a complete dysfunctional way of living. And we haven't empowered and encouraged anyone at all. We just know that we're going to get their memberships for longer.
Yeah.
Excellent. I love it. And a perfect answer. And I always like to give my girlfriend a bit of shit on every single podcast, because she doesn't listen to them. So, and she's the one time I've ever had that backfire, because I basically was like, well, why does this person need to snatch? I'm like, they don't need to learn how to snatch. It's not functional for them. It's not relevant. Like, whatever. And then now she's convinced that she doesn't need to do thrusters ever.
Hey,
so,
he's right.
I'm like, come on, mate, just do some thrusters with me. Now she's like, no, I'm going to goblet squat and that is it. And I'm like, I can't even argue with her that much, which is even more annoying.
The shoulder press side part of it is the more functional bit. Yeah. You got heavy thing of flour, you need to put it on top shelf. Do you know what I mean?
Bear in mind though, my wife is pregnant and is doing pregnant-based training at the minute. And Emma, Phil's missus, is doing it with her because she enjoys it.
I like that. Yeah. You don't need to go all the way at the bottom of the burpee.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But you try convincing my missus that she needs to do anything remotely hard anymore, and she's like, no, don't need it.
Don't need it.
No, you need to go hard, otherwise you're not tapping into the the anaerobic system, and therefore you're not functional because you can't access all fuel sources that are.
Excellent.
There we go, Emma.
She needs to red line. She might not want to do thrusters, but she needs to red line on those goblet squats.
I love it. I'm gonna clip that bit out and send it to her straight away.
Show the pictures of the people puking.
Yeah. I love it. So Paul, I want to ask you as well. Obviously, you're a programming legend, but we want to know a little bit about Built Up North as well. So you started that at the same time as Warrior Programming. I think a lot of people have probably heard of Built Up North in the industry, so around us. But tell us what you do and tell us what that's all about.
Yeah, Built Up North was me scribbling some t-shirt ideas down, which probably weren't going to go anywhere. And then a guy who's like a really incredibly great friend now, but at the time was just kind of an associate with someone in the gym. And he came up to me and he was like, yeah, we should print those t-shirts. And I was like, nah, that's a stupid idea. They're never going to sell. He was like, no, we should print these t-shirts. So I was like, okay. So he was like, I'll fund the first run. And then I was like, I'll take that back and we'll go from there. And, and so this guy believed in the things I was doing. Stephen, he's an absolute hero. He is equally responsible for offending people on the internet. It's not just me. He just got on board with it, and it started with the dialogue that we weren't happy with. At the time, people were doing cool stuff. Like people were doing t-shirts that people digged, but it just wasn't mine and Stephen's style.
Yeah.
Like I said, we skateboarding background, like he had his own dress sense as well. And we were just like, yeah, we can't find CrossFit clothes that kind of suit our vibe. And it was just kind of that with mixed with a little bit of tongue-in-cheek, a little bit of kind of like social commentary on the industry and the things that we were seeing and kind of some of the stuff we wanted to call out. So yeah, we just kind of sat there and just said, okay, we're going to do this thing. It's going to be influenced by the streetwear that we're interested in. We want it to be for everyone who's in the industry, who's in line with us, but also it was like on our vibe, but also we want to be able to make a point at times. We want to be able to have a platform in which if we've got an opinion, like an opinion to voice, we will. So yeah, we just kind of came together and we collaborate. And I do like most of the design work. I do like 90%, 95% of the design work. And yeah, we just kind of generate things that we think are cool, that we think are fun. We try to keep lots of it responsive. So like as soon as something happens, we try to respond quite quickly to it, like be able to like have a bit of tongue in cheek, have a social commentary, maybe some like propaganda vibes involved in there. And just like, we like to give ourselves like a time to capture the moment and to turn things around super quickly and put them out. And And that worked really well. I mean, it worked really well, especially during the whole lockdown thing. It's been really cool.
Yeah.
We managed to raise some money for charity,
Yes.
you know, which was pretty cool. We weren't going to do any t-shirts at all. We didn't want to like capitalize during that time.
Yeah.
But you know, we did some stuff. We did some stuff for fun because we were all locked up and nothing much better to do at the time. Like loads of ideas generated, put it out, people got on board with it, and we were like, okay, let's release some of these for charity, which is, you know, really cool. Makes you feel warm inside, like you've done, you know, one or two things right every now and again.
Yeah, for sure.
And not always though.
Yeah, I do love the occasional slightly offensive t-shirt. It's the there's always a couple of guys in the gym that have got like those ever so slightly offensive t-shirt. You're like, oh, I'm not sure
Razor Storm t-shirts.
Yeah, like Razor Storm really pushed the boat out on offensive t-shirts, though, don't they? That's kind of...
Yeah, the guy from Razor Storm just does not care whatsoever. Going pink is on all the packaging to the people he knew and stuff. Probably some of the people he didn't know as well. He'd like do a portrait of them as a penis. It was absolutely brilliant. The guy's cool. The guy's really cool. I remember it back in the day. Yeah, so it's just been to be honest, it's been great fun. It's just been, you know, it is kind of, it's probably more serious than a hobby, but because it's not my full-time job, it's not the thing that I do. All the fitnessing thing is the thing I do all of the time. So that's like the other thing where I get to like be a bit creative and, you know, do something with a good friend and create stuff. I mean, it's always nice to make something and see the kind of finished product and then to see people wearing it who you don't know. That's always a weird thing, you know?
Yeah, that's cool.
It's cool, look, it doesn't limit you either.
See someone in town with a Bullet North t-shirt on, you don't know them, they're like, oh, who's this? Texting Stephen. Somebody's got a t-shirt on. It's just really good, and it's been really successful, and we've been going for 7 years as well.
Awesome.
Right.
And we've done nothing but grow throughout that time. Every year is our best year.
Right.
So we're just really, really good. Just
excellent. I love it.
And sending people t-shirts.
Amazing. So obviously, I just wanted to find out a little bit more about what's coming up for you, because I say we did a little bit of digging on you before we started the podcast, and I know you've got a couple of new things in the pipeline. Obviously, you're not doing warrior programming anymore, or whatever's happening there. But you are moving on to some other cool stuff. So can you tell us a little bit more about that?
So to step away from warrior programming, I felt that season had come to an end, and that journey and that bit of dialogue had, and kind of I've grown some ways, grown a lot as a person, and kind of got to get to this point and had a lot of time to reflect and thought, you know, now is an opportunity for me to step away from that umbrella and that kind of business identity and see what I can do on my own a little bit, and see where I can explore, like the conversations that we just recently had, you know, about what that could look like from the beginning. And alongside that, there's multiple projects happening. So I've got Fend for Yourself, which is a nutrition program, a nutrition company that I co-own with Celia Gabbiani and Elodie, who are like two amazing French girls who moved up to the UK. So we created a nutrition business, and that's going incredibly well. Following the name says it all, really, Fend for Yourself. We've found that, you know, there's a lot of stuff out there that's kind of confusing and conflicting people about what a diet is, what a diet isn't, what it's like to eat. And actually the good athletes that I'm around, and even like the people who are successful with their nutrition, most of them auto-regulate or have a really sensible way of eating that's not confusing at all. And I think, especially in this, you know, this podcasting world where everyone's got an opinion on some complex diet thing, so many people are going down like still fad diets. It doesn't matter what they call them. Like doing 9 weeks of intermittent fasting is still a fad diet, because it's not something you're going to sustain for your life unless your working pattern means you do shift work and you can't eat for 16 hours a day. It's not a sustainable way of eating, and it's certainly not the way that the best people I've been around eat. So, and I've seen that for so long that I've seen so many bad eating behaviors happening, you know, from over counting and over tracking macros and becoming obsessed with specific numbers, where you start to see food as macronutrients only, and it no longer becomes a meal but a bunch of separate food in separate boxes, which isn't allowed to be friends with other food. You know, food being friends with other food is a meal. You know, it's a dish. You know, and when all of a sudden all those ingredients are in separate weighed out boxes, like there becomes a problem. When people can't go to restaurants without scales, it's a problem. So I've just managed to watch in this industry, watch people be broken down by a poor relationship with food. And it's a really disappointing thing. Like, it's really disappointing to see that that's kind of and I've been involved in macronutrients. Macronutrients are part of a nutrition profile. It's got to be part of it. They've got to understand what that's about. Clients, people in general need to understand what it's about. But the moment it dictates it, and the moment we start to take control over a client and we control them and they can't exist without us, we've created dependency. And again, massive problem in the fitness industry is people being overly dependent on you. So Fend for Yourself became a conversation between me and the two girls, and then with the people that we're working with, about, hey, let's regain control of our nutrition. Let's build our profile back up from scratch, and just understanding that calories are a real thing. They're not a myth anymore, and let's let them be the predominant feature, and let's build the rest of the food around it and try to gauge how much we should be eating and what that looks like, and then maintaining and sustaining a nice, healthy way of living, and being able to make smart judgments based on the feedback we're getting, like emotionally, physically, performance-based, weight-wise. Let's use that stuff as feedback, because our body's incredibly intelligent. It's telling us what we're doing wrong, and then we hate it for it. I put on so much weight. Yeah, because you're eating too much, I'm afraid. Your body's telling you, not because it's a dick, but because it's really great and it's really good at telling you and feedbacking what's happening. So let's regain control, take the food back, take the food up, adjust the protein levels, adjust the carbohydrate level, whatever we need to do, and make your food a little bit better so that you can understand it. And we've done 4 weeks with a gym, and I was on a Zoom call with all those guys last night, and they were like, last night, like, I had 150 calories left, and I'd got some really beautiful chocolate that I didn't know if I could eat, so I ate the chocolate, and it was amazing. And what I would have done in the past was I would have ate an apple and then stared at the chocolate all night, then ate the chocolate anyway, and then had double carbs and been super depressed, and then decided I'd screwed my diet up, and then binge eat for the rest of the evening. These people have got first handstand push-ups, faster running times for fell running. They've lost weight, they've lost inches off hips, they've gained muscle, by eating real meals. Tomorrow night for all those guys is pizza night,
There it is.
They're eating chocolate. She lost weight and got her first handstand push-ups. Eating chocolate as part of her diet. So fend for yourself, as you can tell, is something that's quite fresh in my mind and something that I'm super passionate about.
No, and I think it's really cool, and like, I think the concept that you're getting at as well, like, it's actually something I like. When I'm coaching people's nutrition, I basically use Josh as an example. He doesn't know this, so he's going to get big-headed now. But basically, what I tend to say to people is, you need to learn to do what Josh does naturally. Because I'm
so glad this is recorded.
I know,
never says anything nice to me.
So you calm down, you. So basically, what Josh does, like, I always say this, like, I will eat until it's coming out my ears and I've got no off button. But I'll sit and eat with Josh, and I'll sit and watch him eat slowly, controlled, and he'll take his time with his meal, and then he'll stop when he's full. And I'm like, some people just need to learn to do that naturally. Like Josh, other than the fact that he's got dad bod pending now, like, like, some people just need to learn basic habits of listening to the body, understanding when they should stop, when they actually need to eat more. And again, I have some sort of, and not dependence, but some form of knowledge of how many calories they should be eating, how much protein they should be eating, but it's not the be all and end all. Like I say, Josh kind of does that very naturally, just because he understands his body relatively well.
That's what people need. That's what people need to learn to do. But in order to do that, sometimes we have to start with the stricter element of, hey, this is how many calories you're going to eat today. But then there's also this thing about, like, one of the things that we do is we program in how to, start to do by tracking all the time, then start to do retrospective tracking and look, where did your meal go right and wrong? And then retrospectively track every other day. And before this, we can start to come up with a strategy and a program for how we can create a feedback loop and how we can look at it and start to gauge for ourselves about, did I eat the right amount of food that day? Create habits, and that's what we need to do in this, is find a way, because giving people macros until they're sick of working with you, or until they're really dependent on you, and then they stop, and then they're just like, I can never track again. This is it. There you go. They're broken for life.
Yeah.
Ultimately, the people having neurosis taking, scales and a backup set of scales to the restaurants for them.
Sure.
It's not okay. I mean, just put in Perry Tamer butterfly. That's it. That's all you need to put in. Already in there.
Who orders Perry Tamer? Just like that.
Everyone should order Perry Tamer. If you want to act a bit more manly in front of your friends, get Perry Flamer. They'll put some hot sauce on it as well. Secret Nando's menus.
I love it. And it is like you say, I think it is super interesting conversation that everybody needs to understand. And just, like you say, trying to have that little bit of a feedback loop, something that people can say, right, is this working? Isn't it working? What's your metrics to allow you to say, am I heading in the right direction? And like, something I encourage a lot of people, I don't know if it's something that you'd encourage, but is like to pick a different metric than just what's showing on the scales. So that's important. We need to know that, but let's pick, how do I feel during a workout?
Well, that's exactly it. We have, we go down the scales, we go down the visual route.
Yeah.
Then we go down the kind of like the performance route, and we go down an emotional route. And anything else that may be affected by it, sleep, gut health, all of those things like brain fog, are you feeling bloated, those kind of bits of dialogue with people, and that gives it. And if they can see that, like, if there's more ticks than there is crosses, then like, they're laughing, and then I can actually maybe redirect like how they see themselves, because it's very difficult to see physical change in yourself unless you've not seen yourself physically for a long period of time, which is pretty difficult to do, because our brain just doesn't pick ourselves up like that. It already sees what it thinks it's going to see, so that's why you don't see adjustments in people you see every day. But
Exactly.
you see adjustments in people you haven't seen for 6 weeks, 12 weeks, and you say, oh, you look different. You can't see it. Your brain automatically knows what it's going to see, so it doesn't tell you the image is any different, and it happens slowly over time. So you don't see changes and things like that. So you need to have another metric, but hopefully if you can see that the other things are ticking, you can be like, oh, maybe I should look at myself again properly. So we can kind of like, there's all this cool stuff that we can do that's, it's hard to sell. Well, it's not hard to sell. I mean, it's just common sense. But common sense isn't common.
No.
Yeah.
Listening to what, someone was selling on a podcast. No, I know this is a podcast, but listening to what someone's selling on a podcast is seems to be much easier to believe.
Yeah.
Oh, I've just been told. He's a doctor. Of course, I'm going to start for 21 hours and eat a boiled egg, but only a quarter of it in case I get an insulin response. No.
Well, I'm going to get better at handstand push-up by eating chocolate. So,
well, that's it.
That's my take home. I can't fucking wait now.
Check out Fen for yourself.
I'm in. I'm sold. That's it.
Like, you need to get better at handstand push-ups. It's the only thing you do.
But I like chocolate and handstand push-ups. So now they go together. Well,
that's it. You can do like the Mars bar diet, like include a Mars bar a day into your diet, I'm sure, and get your first handstand push-ups. It's going to sell.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's funny.
Only £263 a month.
People definitely hear what they want, don't they?
Well, that's no disrespect to people, because they only hear what we sell.
Yeah.
And we only see what we push out, and that's whatever the influencers are pushing out, or whatever the influence is pushing out. And the influence is pushing out. They're influencers. They're not scientists.
Yeah.
So they push out whoever's paying the most money.
Bang energy drink.
Oh, and there's the issue with the fitness industry and the rest of the world.
The rest of the world, correct.
When the influencers are selling something that they never even used, it doesn't matter with clothing and things like that, but when they're selling supplements that they've never used, and they never used to get to that point, to people who are aspiring to be like them, and even more aspiring to be noticed by them. We get a world where people are taking things they don't need to and spending money on stuff they don't need to. When all they need to do is take a picture of themselves puking on the floor and sit and tagging me in.
Yeah, well, it's the whole thing, and it's like everyone wants to look like the cover model, but like you don't know that cover model might be full of steroids. He's had all these extra. He doesn't eat the diet that's necessarily in the magazine because you can't post that. Do you know what I mean? Because nobody would buy it, and that's like I say, that's the problem with the fitness industry in general. So
you just don't. I mean, you don't know what it took for that person to get there and how hard it was.
Exactly.
You see the finished product, but you don't know the sleepless nights and the reading and the research they had to do and the hard work they had to put in and their background and their genetics and everything else they've gone through. You know, if you want to look like someone, you have to be willing to take on. This is I got this from Emma, by the way. This is mine. But if you want to look like someone, you want to be like someone, you have to be willing to have done everything they do and gone through everything they've gone through.
Yeah.
And if you will, are you willing to take all that on?
Yeah. You can't just buy in a packet, can you?
No, you can't. And that journey includes suffering and loss and pain and absence from people. You know, what does it really take to get there?
Yeah.
You know, just to be smiling with a can of BCAs.
That's the dream.
I know, yeah. Honestly, the amount of stuff I've said, I'm never getting a knockout sponsor that. Just so you know, if you take the sugar out of the drink, it's not an energy drink; it's a stimulant. So enjoy your stimulants, guys. Just saying.
Oh, we're not getting a sponsorship either.
Well, fend for yourself. They're going to sponsor us.
Yeah, for sure, guys. Like, that's for sure.
I love it.
Tag us in your daily Mars bar.
Daily. I'm going to start having a daily Mars bar after this, just because you're making me hungry more than anything.
It comes off your calories.
Yeah.
It does. So quick one as well, Paul. I just wanted to ask you again. Emma fed us a little bit of information, but you do some work with Bulldog gear as well. Something to do with Bulldog gear. Again, you're a bit of an enigma.
I talked to the guy from Bulldog gear, who's an absolute legend, and we pick up the phone and we rant at each other for a good few hours. Yeah, kind of like this, only without the Zoom. I would say we collaborate on thoughts more than anything else. Nice. At the moment. I have a space that I run called the Campfire, which I'm not sure if it's permanent or temporary. I have no idea what it is at the moment. It's a place for discussion and I think prototyping for whatever might come in the future. Yeah. It's a developmental space, and whether that transforms into something itself or whether it is the pedestal or an area for communication to transform somewhere else to be better or different. It's just a discussion place, and in that has some equipment. Some of that equipment includes a lot of Atlas balls, and I've done some programming. That's on their website that uses Atlas balls a lot and dumbbells, and kind of thinking that that's kind of a much more functional way of training. And I've had a lot of discussions to say with one of the owners, and he's on a similar wavelength about functional training, about not being, for me, it's about not being obsessed with the barbell. And I know for a lot of people I know a lot of people, that's their identity, but everything in life, isn't whatever it is, 26 millimeter diameter and shiny and got knurling on it. Life's not like that. Some rocks are smooth and some rocks are sharp, and you've got to be willing to pick both of them up. So I think there's something really simplistic about when I left the gym environment and I needed one piece of equipment, and the only thing for some reason was an Atlas ball I could think of getting. It was the only piece of equipment that I thought, if I had to get one piece of kit, what would I buy? And it was an Atlas ball, because I knew body weight, I could cover most things, but I knew that I wouldn't. But to develop strength, I could tense my muscles, I could go really slow on a squat, etc. But I knew with an Atlas ball, I could have a weighted resistance element in it, which would make me more functional. Yeah. So when we started training, me and my friend Ryan started training, we had an Atlas ball, that was it. We then got a plyo box and some dumbbells, and we had a pull-up bar. But that was the main piece of kit, and the amount of stuff you find out you can do with it. I just think it was really useful. And like, someone asked me the other day, I was like, why didn't you get a sandbag? Like, is it about internal torque and in this? And I was like, nah, I just want to get sand everywhere.
I love
Like,
it.
unfortunately, they split, and
Yeah.
you know, last thing you want to do is like be outside doing sandbags, throwing a sandbag around in the rain, and then you kind of drag a wet, damp sandbag into your house, and it's got hair in it and the sand everywhere. I'm like, nah, I don't need to deal with that.
Yeah.
I fucking hate sand anyway. You know, like, you're sweating and a bag pops on you. And, nah.
I'm a shoes on the beach. I'm on a shoes on at the beach kind of guy.
Oh, your toes and everything.
I don't
Nope.
I just don't like sand. I just don't like sand on me.
Love it. So obviously, like one thing I did as well. You mentioned the campfire, and I saw something on the website that I thought was quite cool, and I'm going to butcher it, so I do apologise. But it's basically like, we don't know what we are yet, but we're open to have a discussion about finding out what we are, and basically get better in the process. And I was just like, I love that. That was pretty cool. Like, and the website's amazing, by the way, as well. Whoever's designed that's really good.
Elodie created it. She did a really good job.
But it's a good website in the fact that like it's advertising something, and I'm like, which doesn't tell me out.
No, that's because it's genuine. We don't know what it is. Like I went in there with a pretty hard feeling that I didn't want to create a gym.
Right. Cool.
Because I'm not always certain that gym environments, like I said, because of dependency, etc. I'm not entirely sure that gym environments and group class environments create better people. Do they create fitter people? Yes. Yeah. Do they create better people? It depends. If they become dependent on that group environment and they become, you know, cliquey within it, or other things happen, or it takes over their whole life, or it takes away from their personal life, or it takes away from their work life, then if we truly made them better, I'm uncertain. So I was unsure about if I called it a gym, I think it would have come with the baggage of what that name brings with it.
Yeah.
And that wasn't something that I wanted. I don't want people to come into the space with an expectation. I don't want you to come in with an expectation that when you say, can I have a session with you? I don't want you to even have an expectation that you might train. You know, it could end up with you. I mean, I had a training session the other day with somebody, and we came, we met me, and we sat there for a bit. And we had a talk, and he went, yeah, I feel a bit crap about some stuff. He just like literally cried for an hour. He left. So, you know, you might end up crying because you're in pain, because I've made you do some assault bike sprints, or you might end up being emotional about something else that's going on in your life. I don't want the space to be defined by, you know, effort, exertion, and giving. Yeah. Doesn't need to always look like exercise. And I didn't want to be bound to this title that defined that I had to do that. Now we knew we're from a fitness background. We understand that we're probably going to change people through fitness. That's what we do. But I didn't need that assumption or the baggage that went along with that. So yeah, I don't know what it is. I still don't know what it is. I mean, part of me is like, is this going to become something, or is this actually is it literally just a campfire where you come around it, you have a conversation, and then you go away and do something else as a result? And I'm fully content and feel privileged to be in a position as a coach and a trainer where I get that breathing space in an environment that, you know, guys who own gyms who've got hundreds of members or 50 members or 200 members or whatever, you don't get the opportunity, maybe during COVID, but you don't get the opportunity to sit back and breathe and go, hang on, man, I'm doing this right. Or have I just followed what I saw the other gyms do and assumed that meant it was right? But then the metric you base that on is, how many members have you got? What does your Instagram look like? Not like, hey, how many of your members are happy? How many of your members leave the gym and are empowered with their life? Or how many of your members actually leave the gym and they only want to be back in the gym? Because if they're only in the gym for 2 hours a day, that means either 22 hours of their life sucks because of the gym. And I know we don't see it like that, but are we just following the rhythm in a quest to have members so that we can fund our own lifestyle? Yeah. And people listen to us? Or are we really serious about changing people?
I like it.
And I get the privilege I'm in a privileged position where, because of the projects I've worked on, I'm lucky enough to have a very small space where I don't really necessarily need people in there. I want the right people to walk through the door, but I don't need anyone to be in there.
Yeah, excellent. That's some awesome food for thought. I like it, and I definitely something we're going to think about going. We're going to go and sit in the gym now and sit around the campfire and figure some shit out now. But obviously, Paul, I'm dead conscious about your time as well. So we're going to quickly move on to the final questions.
Okay.
So pretty simple questions. First one is always, do you have a book or a film recommendation for everybody? I like books, as you can see. So if you've got a good book, always go and buy it afterwards.
No.
No? Any
No,
films?
I mean, if it's a good enough book, they'll make a film out of it. Surely. Surely.
True story. I like it.
There we go.
I don't know. The 300 was pretty life changing. No, in all seriousness, like there's some certain books I've really enjoyed and got a lot out of at the time. There's a book called The Poetics of Space by a guy called Bachelard, which is like basically like a poetry book about basically like a poetry philosophy thing by, I think, a French kind of philosopher who's interested in architecture and interested in buildings. I think when people ask me, that was like a really influential book on how I sit and think about things.
Right, okay.
You know, so it's kind of deep, it's kind of abstract from the fitness industry, but there's so many fitness books out there that are easy to read that just all tell you the same stuff. Sorry,
Yeah.
If you know, there's so many out there. Like if you're still having to read a book to learn how to make someone stronger with a back squat, you're already lost.
Yeah.
You know, it's basic information. You can probably tell you that you could just read Pralpin's chart. It's done, completed it. Where I think of the things that make you question people and question your environment. And I think that book, for instance, makes me think about the gym space, about, you know, if people are going to get better. Gym spaces that make people better more often than not, when you see them, are the rough and ready places that are like, you know, they look hard as nails, they look rough, paint's dripping off the walls. Yet for some reason we seek this comfortable version with sofas, coffee machines, and wood paneling on the walls.
Yeah.
And that's the way it's created, and it's because the buildings that we're in influences about what we're willing to give in our expectations. Somewhere's pretty and soft and robust, we're going to have a vision about what we want to look like within that space, you know. And when we've done workouts like rowing and stuff, and we switch the lights off in the gym and done like a 10K row, people have a tendency to go harder than they would, and that's because they know that people can't fully see them. So, you know, they are then judged on their effort rather than what they look like they're putting into it. And you'll get a lot more out of them. So I think things like that, things that make you question environment and space, the way we see things, imagery, the way we relate to people, are much better things for a reading list for someone who wants to be a coach. Learn to understand people better. You know, throw away, stick the Ben Bergeron book in the bin, like all that crap. Like, just figure out more about people and relating to them. There's a reason people dig poetry. It's because it taps into their subconscious and their soul. Like, I'm not saying go out and read loads of poetry. I'm just saying that, like, there's more in that will get stuff out of people than you're reading 1,000,001, you know, exercise books.
It's a great answer. I love it. Okay, so next question. I've not done this one in a while. In a film about your life, what's that word? In a film about your life, who would play you other than you?
Joaquin Phoenix.
Right.
Or Shia LaBeouf. Either way, I'm happy with either of those two.
Can't be Joaquin Phoenix. Because still don't forgive him.
What?
I don't forgive Joaquin Phoenix. Killing fucking Maximus.
he's never got over that.
Can't move past it.
Yeah, they're both. You know, they both pull off a beard well, and they're both tapped enough. I think they're both a bit eccentric enough. Yeah.
Awesome.
Cool.
If you could have a go at being a professional in any sport, what would it be?
Oh, that's hard.
You can't choose skateboarding either.
Yeah.
You tell me skateboarding isn't a sport.
No.
It's as much as a sport as CrossFit. Let's go with that.
Because you can already skateboard.
I don't know. Sports sound like a lot of effort. I was kind of thinking cycling, and I was like, no, because you have to go out really, really long and far. That's a lot of time to spend on my own. I went on a big bike ride once.
What about darts? Because you can do that socially.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I'm going to stick with skateboarding.
Skateboarding.
No, cycling.
Okay.
Cool.
Cycling would be pretty cool. Something long distance.
Awesome.
The legs that you get as a result.
And
those guys are super fit. Do you know what I mean? Super fit.
Yeah, for sure. To be fair, we read that book by Matt Fitzgerald. I forget the name of it every single time.
How bad do you want it?
How bad do you want it? No matter how many times I talk about that book, I forget the name of it. But the sections in cycling about that are like, I was hurting listening to reading it. Never mind doing it. It's just like so painful.
Questioning your own existence, I think, throughout. Then that's kind of why it appeals to me. I mean, mostly because of the cyclists. Some of the cyclists that I managed to hear from are just super deep thinkers, and I'm just like, yeah, cool. There's a lot of time in your own to think. It's both a great thing and a bad thing, right? Like,
there's a reason they're deep thinkers. Hours and hours of pain and misery on your own.
Believe it or not, I'm not big into sports.
Oh, it's all good.
I'm not really a sports person. I like the idea of transforming people for the thing that they're doing and they're invested in. I'm not biased towards any sport. I can just appreciate effort and appreciate what it takes to become something more. And I'm more than happy to like spend a whole bunch of time investing in an individual and understanding the nuances and the energy systems and demands of that sport, and then figuring out a master plan to get someone there.
Yeah.
But I don't really care about the sport. I care about the transformation and what it's going to take to get there. That's a much cooler journey.
Okay. Last question. Biggest dick gym move. So what does somebody do in the gym that really pisses you off?
CrossFit.
Great answer. Done. I'm not even going to. That's it. Let's wrap it up. Brilliant. I love it. Paul, that was awesome. Ending on a high. I like it. Paul, thank you very much for joining us. Before I let you go, where can people find out more about you?
Instagram, Paul_warrior__, double underscore at the end.
Nice.
There's a link tree in there thing. I heard that's what people do these days, and you can hit links to my different projects, to Fend for Yourself, Campfire, Build Up North, my workouts on Bulldog Gear, stuff like that.
Awesome. Excellent. Thank you again. Thank you very much for joining us. It's been an awesome conversation. I hope everybody enjoys it as per usual. And before I go though, we do have to thank our sponsor, X Endurance, and obviously don't forget to check them out and get they probably don't sponsor us anymore because we just sell stimulants. Thank our sponsor.
I still use your X Endurance. Don't go anywhere. I still use it.
Basically, I forgot what I'm saying. xendurance.eu. Check them out and you can get the 20% off with the code AgogeTV20. Again, guys, thank you very much for joining us. Thank you very much for listening. Don't forget to like, share, review, subscribe, all the fun stuff. And peace. Thank you.